In this video, I'm going to be repairing probably the war's nastiest PS5, and if you can see just by the fingerprints alone, you'll have an idea of how bad it is. You can look in there. Yeah, this one's pretty bad. Of course, it came in needing an HDMI port. It overheats, it doesn't turn on correctly. And, well, I don't blame it if you see this condition, so go ahead and get it apart and see what's going on with this thing pretty much. Just to give you an idea how bad this is, you can see this guy definitely was a heavy smoker. There's no doubt about his nicotine everywhere. You can see everything's clogged up pretty much. So I'm going to go and take this further apart and we'll see how bad it really is once I get into it. Yep, this is how bad it is. You can see there, no airflow pretty much. Everything's clogged like this. It actually was a lot worse, but I cleaned up some of it so it doesn't get everywhere. But I'm going to go and take this to the back, get a vacuum to it, and then take the air compressor to it and clean it out before we continue with this PS5. But yeah, this is probably one of the worst I have ever seen. So I went ahead and took a vacuum and brush to it, and you can see I cleaned most of what I could get off, at least enough so I can go ahead and actually work on it and clean most of the van. Some of it's still stuck on there because obviously the nicotine, tar, and whatever else is on there. But I'm going to go ahead and get this top plate out because first thing we're going to do is the HDMI port, of course. So that way you can see if it's working, not working, any picture or no picture. And we'll go from there with this one. So went ahead and removed the whole main board. You only need to take that, once you get the drive and everything out, take the top shield off. And once you take the top shield off, you of course disconnect the cables and you can lift the board straight out pretty much to get to it. But yep, you can see it definitely was overheating for a very long time, and of course for obvious reasons because everything was just clogged with dirt, nicotine, and even some mold. So yeah, it's no wonder it overheated. But what happens when they overheat though, is you can see right there the liquid metal, how it's pulled to one side because obviously the PS5 is sitting vertically, but also that it oxidizes. You can see the oxidation on the core, those dark spots right there. And you can also see it on the heatsink side and stuff. So I'll tell you how to take care of that, and you do it with alcohol and Q-tips and stuff, and you can actually pull all the liquid metal into a ball and clean the actual surface without even having to remove the liquid metal and stuff like that, and get it nice and clean, then respread it. And same thing you gotta do onto the actual core side and stuff. Now it doesn't look like it leaked out because sometimes if you drop these PS5s or whatever, you'll see it splatter on the outside, and when I see it that bad, usually I'll go ahead and pull, of course, all the liquid metal to one side, suck it up with a syringe, and then I'll remove this plastic thing to see if it got on the circuit board or anything like that. But this PS5 actually did turn on and stuff like, because it went blue to white. Of course, I didn't see anything on the picture, and you can see obvious right, that HDMI is, you can tell, completely destroyed. So I'll have to deal with that issue first, and then I'll go ahead and show you how to actually clean up the heatsink side and the core side to get the liquid metal into a ball and respread it. And then hopefully maybe this PS5 will actually work. So what I'm doing here is removing the HDMI port. And I'm just doing about 440 degrees Celsius on the top, and have the preheater on to preheat the bottom side too as well. There's a few methods to doing it. One is to actually go ahead and use a bottom heater, which is what I'm doing, and a top heater, and then you can just lift it straight up. Or the other way I usually like to do is I'll just flip the board upside down, heat the bottom side, and I'll literally let the HDMI port drop out. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and I'll be back once it's off. So I went ahead and finished removing the HDMI port, and thankfully none of the pads actually got ripped or anything like, because as you can see, that was pushed pretty far back in, and that's one of the things sometimes that will happen is if it gets pushed in too far back, it could damage the pads and it could also break the component behind it and stuff. And thankfully this one looks pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up. I'm gonna remove the old solder, of course, and then drag solder new solder on it, and I'll be right back once I'm done doing that pretty much. So I went ahead and removed the old solder and I applied fresh solder to the pads. Went and just drag soldered it straight across. It only takes a few seconds. And then I did the same thing on the HDMI port as well, because I always pre-tin the leads on the HDMI port. And then this way, all I have to do is just bring this board up to temperature. I can literally drop the HDMI port onto there, and it'll solder pretty much perfect, like factory pretty much. Then you can take it under the microscope, make sure that solder's on both sides of the leads, on all the leads, and none of them are loose, and you're good to go pretty much. So I went ahead and finished bringing this board up to temperature, and I dropped the HDMI port in there, and it's nice and soldered now. You can see there the post that actually hold the HDMI port's nice and soldered around, and all the pins behind it are on the pads, and it's soldered all the way around. None of them are loose. You can also do the tweezers test to see if any of the pins are loose, or put it under a microscope and do both and just see if any of the pins are loose. But you can tell under the microscope because you'll see the solder flow. It makes a nice seat underneath the pad, and you know it's soldered really well. So I'm going to go ahead and actually clean up the remaining flux off this board and stuff like that. Get this board into the chassis and see what other issues besides the overheating issue that this board may or may not have. So I went ahead and halfway assembled this PS5 enough just to see if we do get an actual picture and if there's any other further issues that I gotta go through with this thing. Yeah, I don't have none of the screws on the top here because I'm gonna take this all the way back apart to show you how to do the liquid metal. But for now, I just want to test to make sure it still powers on and stuff. So as you can see there, we do get the blue light, and it is actually staying on, so that's a good sign that nothing's shorted. Because typically if we're shorted, it wouldn't do that. And let's see if we actually get any picture and stuff. It might take a while because it probably was shut down improperly. But we should be getting a picture any minute. It's still blue right now. And yep, there we go. We do got a picture, and then of course it's doing the repair because it probably was shut down improperly when he knocked it over and broke the HDMI port. But yep, she is powering on, and hopefully we'll get something in a second here. So it's turning on right now still, and you can see there, still blue, and it should hopefully go to the white once it boots up. And yeah, we do have the PS logo up there. And yep, there you go. And we do got this white right around here. So I'm going to go and tear this back down. It does seem to be working. Definitely fixed the obvious because he did say it overheated and stuff like that. So I'm going to address the overheating issue. And I'll be back once I get to that part. So now we're going to go ahead and address the overheating issue. Now obviously you can see why it oxidized there. And you would think this could be really hard to do to clean this off. It actually isn't. What you need is at least 91% alcohol right here. So I'm going to go ahead and dip the Q-tip into there. Let's go ahead and get some on the Q-tip there. Okay, now I got the Q-tip redded. This is all you do. And what it does is it repels the water, and you could essentially make it into a ball like I'm doing right now. And same thing even with the stuff on the side right here. And you can connect it to it to make it into a ball. And then you can kind of get moved up. And then you just add more there. And you can see how it's becoming bigger and bigger. And you're going to go ahead and do this, and you're going to go all the way around there so you get one larger bar, and then you're going to go ahead and clean the core. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because it's going to take a little time to do that, and I'll go ahead and turn the camera back on once I get to that point. So here you can see the core, and what I did was you can see there it's into a ball right now, and I'm just cleaning this. See this black oxide? That's from it oxidizing. You want to clean that off the core. Then you just move this over to the other side. You clean that, of course, and you get it to where the core is nice and clean. Then you can go ahead and break the tension of a dry cotton swab and spread it to where it got a nice wet finish. But for now, I'm gonna go and finish cleaning up this core, and I'll be right back once I'm done. So went ahead and cleaned up the core, and you can see now it got a nice mirrored finish pretty much. There's none of that black oxidized liquid metal on there no more. I took it off, and you can see from, hold on, let me grab 2 horse ones right there. That's that black oxide that was on the core. So I went and cleaned it up. So now the next thing I'm going to do is take a dry cotton swab and push down on this, and it's going to break the surface tension, which is going to allow me to spread the liquid metal. I'm going to have to do that off camera because it does take some time and patience. But I'm going to go ahead and be back once I got it done and how it should look like after you get done reapplying the liquid metal. So I went ahead and did most of it, and I figure I'll go and show you the progress. But what you want to do is have a nice mirrored wet type finish on top of the core, of course, and you also want to repeat and do the same thing on the actual heat sink too. And of course, you know, anywhere there's little gaps and stuff, you either want to spread it out or add a little bit more liquid metal depending on if you lost some or not. But you want to have it nice and even across the core and stuff like that, and a nice wet finish. And then you want to do the same thing on the heatsink side. So I'm going to go and finish this up, and I'll show you when I get to the heatsink part. Here's the heatsink side, and you can see I got most of it already pulled up into one big ball, but you can see the heatsink's very well oxidized from the overheating and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and have to take some attention to this, get rid of all that oxidation and stuff, and then reapply the liquid metal. And I'll be back once I'm done reapplying the liquid metal on the surface on the heatsinks clean. So here's after a few minutes of trying to get the black oxide off this heatsink. It was very, very bad, and I had to do a little bit of polishing to get it clean again. And you can see how bad it was. It was pretty bad. But you definitely want to make sure you get that black oxide off the heatsink, because if you don't get it off there, this PS5 will overheat again, and it'll just keep overheating because it's going to develop a hot spot where that black oxide is. So it's very important that you do go ahead and clean and polish up the heatsink, and same thing with the core and stuff like that. So that way when you reapply the liquid metal, it applies it nice and even, and therefore it's not having hot spots and stuff on the core. So I'm going to go and spread this out, and I'll be right back once I get it done spread out. So I went ahead and somewhat reapplied the liquid metal, and what you pretty much want is a nice wet surface, and where it's somewhat a mirrored finish and nice and even. You don't want no dips or anything like that. Still got to work at this a little bit, but it's pretty much most of the way there. And you want a nice even wet coating across the whole entire heatsink and no dips or anything like that. So I'm going to go and finish this off. Also go ahead and do this thermal putty and stuff like that on there. And we'll get this board back into the chassis and clean the rest of the system out pretty much. But it's pretty much almost ready to go. So there you go. The PS5 is fully repaired. I went ahead, cleaned the heat sinks, went ahead, redid the liquid metal, replaced the HDMI port and everything else on it. And you can see even cleaned it up a little bit somewhat. Does not as bad as it is before, even though it's still pretty bad, but at least I was able to get rid of most of the nicotine off the casing and everything else, and even on this side too. So we'll go ahead and power it on. I'll show you it works. I would actually call this more of a restoration than a repair, being how bad this was, but we'll go ahead and see if we get anything out in the video, of course. Should come up soon. Okay. And then there you go. She's coming up. Yep, and it is fully working. Of course, it's already white light, which is good. And probably for the next maybe half an hour, I'm not going to do that on the video though. I'm going to go ahead and stress test this thing just to make sure it works properly. But there you go. So it is nice and finished now. And here you go. And we're at the main menu. So this PS5 repair was a success pretty much.